Hey guys. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed seeing the start of our orchard. I'm definitely very happy with it. Can't wait to be able to get that stuff up on the property and get it in the ground, get it planted, and just get our orchard started, and you guys will definitely be with us. I will definitely take you guys along, and I will show you guys exactly, what we're doing and when we're planting stuff, and you guys will get to see the whole 9 yards. So anyway, just wanted to start doing, some more informational videos, get some more of these out there. Not doing hand wash. I have nowhere to hang up my clothesline outside, so that's not gonna happen right now. So God, I'm extremely tired right now. Alright, so back to the backyard homestead. And this is basic steps in winemaking, you guys. Alright, so winemaking equipment. The following tools are the basics of the winemaker's kit. The plastic fermentation vessel is an essential, but it is a favorite modern convenience. It comes with its own fermentation lock, which makes the airtight secondary fermentation easier. Many other gadgets, from hydrometers to measure the alcohol content of the wine to corkers, are widely available in specialty stores and catalogs. They are not necessary but are fun to acquire if you're going to make more than a few trial batches. 2-gallon plastic bucket. Even if you are only making 1 gallon of wine, you need a container large enough to allow room for active fermentation. Plastic cover for the bucket. Siphon tube, about 4 to 6 feet of narrow, clear plastic tubing. 1 gallon glass jugs or plastic fermentation vessels. Fermentation lock, wine bottles, new or used. Corks must be purchased new each time. A mallet for pounding corks, and a strainer. Cleanliness in every aspect of the winemaking process is extremely important. Equipment must be sanitized. Bacteria that cause spoilage or turn wine to vinegar always lurk in the background. Sanitizing every piece of equipment greatly improves the taste and keeping quality of wine. You can also use a 10% bleach solution to sanitize equipment, which then must be rinsed well in hot water 3 times. Or Campton tablets. And they talk about that. Which are tablets that release sulfur dioxide gas when dissolved. They're used to sanitize the winemaking equipment and to ensure that wild yeasts and bacteria that would interfere with the wine yeast are not present. So if I decide to do that, I might go ahead and get the Campton tablets. Basic steps in winemaking. Winemaking is an adventure to be enjoyed from the first crushing of the fruit to the last sip of your homemade vintage. Use fresh fruit and flavoring. Read all the basic steps of the recipe before you begin. Primary fermentation. During this first step, the basic ingredients, fruit, juice, sweetener, yeast, are combined into must. During the first step, the basic ingredients, fruit, juice, sweetener, yeast, are combined into must. The must, okay. Never heard a term like that. The must sits and ferments vigorously as the yeast takes on oxygen and reproduces. Can tell I've never done this before. But I might actually try it just to see, and I'll definitely show you guys when we do, so don't worry. 2 to 4 pounds of fruit, 1 cup of granulated sugar. Make sure you use the raw cane sugar. 1 gallon of boiled water. Do not use tap water. Citric acid or acid blend if specified in the recipe. 1 Campton tablet crushed. 1 teaspoon of yeast or yeast starter culture. Yeast starter culture. This is optional. 1.5 cups of tepid fruit juice, orange juice, or juice from the fruit in the wine recipe. 1 package, 5 to 7 grams of wine yeast. Remember, you cannot use bread yeast. 1 teaspoon of yeast nutrient. All right, number 1, sanitize all the equipment. Rinse thoroughly with hot tap water. You will need the following materials: 2 to 3 gallon plastic container for primary fermenter, plastic cover with fermentation lock, strainer if specified in the recipe, a siphon tube, 1 gallon glass container. 2. Bruise the fruit, placing the bag in a straining bag makes the later removal of the pulp much easier. Place in a plastic container. Add sugar, water, and acid according to recipe directions. 4. Add the Campden tablet. Let sit for 24 hours and dissipate before adding the yeast. Number 5. Make yeast starter culture, optional. My hair's tickling me. This helps the yeast develop more rapidly and efficiently, just as with bread making. In a small sanitized container, combine the fruit juice, wine yeast, and yeast nutrient. Cover and shake vigorously. Let stand at room temperature for 1 to 3 hours until it becomes bubbly. Number 6. Add yeast or yeast starter culture to the must. Cover, attach the fermentation lock. Number 7. Allow must to ferment according to time and recipe, usually 3 to 5 days. It should work actively and may develop a cap or layer of solids floating on top. 8. Punch a hole in the cap if the recipe calls for it, taking care not to push the solids back down into the liquid. 9. Strain, if directed in the recipe. Most wines do not need to be strained. The racking process usually separates the wine from its cap and leaves sediment. Number 10. Insert the siphon tube to 1 inch above the sediment. Rack siphon wine into the clean gallon jar. Number 11. Discard lees and cap that are left behind in the fermentation vessel. All right, secondary fermentation. By the secondary fermentation, the liquid is now called wine. It is racked into a clean vessel and sealed with a fermentation lock. It will now sit again to ferment until clear, while the yeast converts the sugars to alcohol and carbon dioxide. For some wines, the racking and airlocked fermentation process needs to be performed a third time. Hang on. So it doesn't go off on me. Number 1, sanitize all the equipment. Rinse thoroughly with hot water. You will need the following: 1 gallon plastic or glass container for secondary fermenter, fermentation lock, and siphon tube. Number 2, fill the container about almost to the rim. Attach fermentation lock to the spout of the plastic container or rubber stopper. This will allow carbon dioxide to escape without letting any air in. Number 3, let the wine sit to work until clear, anywhere from 2 weeks to several months. This fermentation will not be nearly as vigorous as the first one. Number 4, rack again into a clean container, if necessary for further clarification. Bottling. You could store your wine in a jug, but regular wine bottles are much nicer and keep the wine better for longer. 1. Gather equipment and sanitizing materials. Wine bottles, siphon tube, corks, mallet, or corker. Alternatively, country wines can be capped as beer is. Sanitize wine bottles in the siphon tube. Rinse 3 times in hot tap water. Number 2. Using the siphon tube, rack wine into the bottles. Number 3. Insert corks 1/4 of the way into the bottles. Allow to sit for 1 to 2 weeks. If the corks pop, the wine may not be completely fermented and it may need to go back into an airlocked container for another period of fermentation. Number 4. If the corks have not popped after the first 2 weeks, cover them with a thick cardboard to prevent chipping the bottles, and use a mallet to tap them firmly into the bottles. Number 5. Cellar in a cool, dark place, usually for at least 6 months before sampling. Wine is best stored on its side with the neck of the bottle slightly lower than the bottom. This keeps the cork moist and swollen so it prevents air from entering the bottle. Be sure to label each bottle before you store it. And that was making wine. Basic steps in winemaking. And let me see. I think I'm going to cut this off right here, and on the next video, I'm going to give you a couple of recipes. So that was basic steps in winemaking, and sounds pretty good. And I think I'm definitely going to try it once we've got the fruit to use. So I will definitely take you guys along in that process. And I can't wait, guys. I will see you guys in a few minutes. Bye, guys.